Helmut Lang didn't just leave fashion, he erased himself from it. At the height of his success, he walked away without a word, abandoning the empire he built and leaving behind a brand that would never recover.
For me, it was not a hard decision, and it is the right decision.
Once a pioneer of modern minimalism, he redefined what luxury could be. Stripped down, industrial, and effortlessly modern. He was a pioneer, a visionary, someone who didn't just follow trends but created them. His influence still echoes through the biggest names in fashion today. But the brand that still bears his name? A directionless shell. Years of corporate control, failed revivals, and creative missteps turned it into just another label, stripped of the very essence that made it iconic. So what really happened? Why did Helmut Lang disappear from fashion forever? And why has his brand never been the same without him? But before we get into this downfall, let's look at how Helmut Lang changed fashion forever and why no one has been able to replace him. Born in Austria in 1956, he spent his early years far removed from the fashion capitals of the world, raised by his grandparents in a quiet mountain village. But even in isolation, his eye for design sharpened. When he moved to Vienna at 10, the city's clean lines, strict uniforms, and industrial aesthetic left an impression that would later define his work. By the late 1970s, Lang was frustrated with what fashion had to offer. So he did what any creative would. He made his own. His personal experiments with clothing caught attention, and in 1977, he opened his first studio. His designs were precise, stripped down, and effortlessly modern, so much so that by 1986, he had landed on the Paris Fashion Week calendar, bringing something completely new to the runway. At a time when fashion was drenched in excess, Lang went the opposite way. His pieces were sharp, functional, and free of unnecessary decoration. Military-inspired outerwear, sleek tailoring, and denim reimagined with paint splatters and raw edges. Everything had a purpose. Nothing was ornamental. He blurred the lines between high fashion and streetwear before it even had a name, pulling elements from utility wear, work uniforms, and fetish culture into something that felt radical, yet refined. His vision wasn't just minimalist. It was confrontational in its simplicity. But Lang wasn't just changing how people dressed, he was changing how fashion was seen. He didn't care for traditional marketing. Instead, he put his name on New York City taxicabs, turning the streets into his personal billboard. He became the first designer to live stream a runway show online, years before the fashion industry realized the internet would change everything. Instead of glossy magazine ads, he collaborated with conceptual artist Jenny Holzer, replacing supermodels and luxury branding with cryptic text-based statements. Every move was deliberate. Every choice meant to break the mold. Helmut Lang had built something rare, a brand that felt entirely his own. His designs weren't flashy or trend-driven, yet they spoke to a new generation that was tired of the over-the-top glamour dominating fashion at the time. Helmut Lang had built his brand with precision. His vision was sharp, modern, and entirely his own. But in fashion, success always attracts corporate interest, and in 1999, Prada came knocking. What seemed like an opportunity at first would soon spiral into disaster. That year, Prada acquired a 51% stake in the Helmut Lang brand, promising expansion, prestige, and the resources to take it to the next level. But corporate deals in fashion rarely favor the designer, and Lang was no exception. The creative freedom that had made his brand legendary was now tangled in a web of executives, marketing strategies, and financial targets. The brand that once set trends was now being reshaped by people who didn't understand what made it special in the first place. The first mistake? Cutting back on denim. For most brands, jeans were an afterthought, but for Helmut Lang, they were a statement. Paint-splattered, razor-sharp, and effortlessly cool. His denim line had revolutionized the category, elevating jeans to high fashion, and, more importantly, it made up over 50% of the brand's revenue. But Prada had other plans. In an attempt to turn Helmut Lang into an accessories powerhouse, They scaled back the denim line in favor of handbags and fragrances. It was a move that made no sense, and the numbers proved it. Sales, once soaring over $100 million, collapsed to just $30 million within a few years. As Prada tightened its grip, Lang found himself further removed from the brand he had built. The corporate pressure to chase mass appeal clashed with his refusal to compromise on design. He had never been a designer who played by the rules, and now those rules were being forced upon him. By 2004, Prada took full control of the company, buying out the remaining shares. And just like that, Helmut Lang's name belonged to someone else. For Lang, this was the final straw. He had spent decades carving out a space in fashion that was entirely his own, but now he was just a name on a label. In 2005, he walked away. No farewell collection, no grand exit, just silence. Unlike other designers who leave only to stage dramatic comebacks, Lang had no intention of returning. He didn't just leave fashion, he abandoned it. And as he disappeared into the art world, his brand fell into freefall. What followed was a long, slow decline, a string of failed creative revivals, and an identity crisis that left the once revolutionary Helmut Lang label struggling to find its place in a world he had helped create. For Helmut Lang, there was no looking back. But just a few years after he left fashion behind, an event occurred that felt almost like fate. In 2010, a fire broke out in his New York studio, destroying a large portion of his fashion archive. For many designers, this would have been a devastating loss, a symbol of their legacy going up in smoke. But for Lang, it was something else entirely. Rather than trying to salvage what remained, he made a decision that shocked the fashion world. He gathered the rest of his archive, thousands of pieces spanning decades of his work, and shredded them himself. What was once a collection of iconic garments, now reduced to fibers, was transformed into sculptures, abstract, elongated structures made from fabric, pigment, and resin. It was a definitive statement, a final severing of ties with the industry that had once celebrated him. Helmut Lang wasn't just leaving fashion behind. He was erasing it. While Lang found freedom in art, his brand was left to fend for itself. When Helmut Lang walked away, he didn't just leave behind a company. He left behind an empty shell. The name still existed, the logo still carried weight. But without him, the brand had no direction, no identity, and no leader who truly understood what made it special. And as the years passed, that became painfully obvious. After Lang's departure, Prada wasted no time getting rid of the struggling label, selling it off in 2006 to Link Theory Holdings, a Japanese company best known for its more commercial, mass-market brand, Theory. Their plan? To revive Helmut Lang and turn it into a modern success. But reviving a brand built entirely on the vision of one man without that man was easier said than done. The first attempt came with husband and wife design duo Michael and Nicole Kolovos, who took over as creative directors in 2006. The problem? Their version of Helmut Lang wasn't Helmut Lang at all. Their collections felt watered down, trying to replicate Lang's signature aesthetic, but without his sharpness, his edge, or his innovative spirit. It was a sanitized version of what the brand once was, familiar enough to carry the name, but lacking any of the risk-taking that had made it revolutionary. For nearly 8 years, their collections came and went, but none of them left an impact. By 2014, they were out. Then came the next attempt to inject new life into the brand, this time through editor-in-residence Isabella Burley, who took over in 2017. Instead of a single creative director, she brought in guest designers, one of whom was none other than rapper Travis Scott. The result? A collection that felt more like a cash grab than a true revival, featuring graphic t-shirts and hoodies that looked more like concert merch than the work of a once legendary label. Next up was Shane Oliver, founder of Hood by Air, who stepped in for a one-off collection in 2018. His take on Helmut Lang was bold, sexual, and experimental. But it leaned more into his own aesthetic than Lang's. And once again, the brand failed to find a lasting identity. The years that followed were a revolving door of designers, each trying and failing to capture the magic that had once defined Helmut Lang. No matter who took over, the brand never felt like itself. Instead, it became a label desperately clinging to its past, constantly re-releasing old designs in a re-edition collection rather than creating anything truly new. Then, in 2023, the brand made what seemed like its biggest play for legitimacy yet, hiring Peter Do, one of the most promising young designers in the industry, as its new creative director. Known for his precision tailoring and modern minimalism, Do's appointment seemed like the perfect fit. His debut collection for Spring-Summer 2024 was met with high expectations as it attempted to revive the DNA of Helmut Lang with sleek, structured silhouettes and a focus on uniform dressing. Do reintroduced bold graphic text in collaboration with poet Ocean Vuong, a nod to Lang's past work with conceptual artist Jenny Holzer. While the collection stayed true to his own aesthetic, some critics noted that it lacked the rawness and edge that made Lang's original work so impactful. Still, there was hope. For the first time in years, it seemed like Helmut Lang had a future beyond nostalgia. But just over a year later, that hope collapsed when Peter Do announced his departure after only one season. With no clear vision and no designer able to fill Lang's shoes, the question now is simple. Is there anything left to save? After Peter Do's departure in 2024, Helmut Lang is once again a brand without direction. What was supposed to be a revival, an attempt to bring back the sharp, effortless cool of Lang's designs, has now left the brand in limbo. No clear creative lead, no real identity, and no sign of a strong future. Yet, despite the uncertainty, the brand continues to push forward. The Spring 2025 campaign, shot by Pega Faramand, leans into Helmut Lang's minimalist heritage, focusing on clean lines and controlled silhouettes. Similarly, the Resort 2025 collection, designed before Do's exit, presented versatile, layered casual wear, balancing slouchy chic with edgy sophistication. While these collections suggest an effort to keep the label's DNA alive, the question remains: without a strong creative lead, can Helmut Lang truly reclaim its former identity? Meanwhile, Lang's original work has never been more in demand. The second-hand market for vintage Helmut Lang is thriving, with collectors hunting down his perfectly cut blazers, paint-splattered denim, and signature outerwear. Ironically, while the brand itself struggles to define its future, the past has never felt more relevant. But while the brand searches for its identity, Lang's influence has never faded. You can still see it everywhere, in the sharp tailoring of Raf Simons, the deconstructed edge of Rick Owens, the effortless minimalism of Phoebe Philo. His legacy is in the way fashion treats basics like something more, in how streetwear and high fashion have become inseparable. And if you've ever worn a piece that just felt right, not because it was loud or flashy, but because the cut, the fabric, and the attitude were in perfect balance, then you know exactly what made Lang special. He didn't need theatrics. A tank top, a blazer, a pair of jeans. Somehow in his hands, the most ordinary things became iconic. He never followed trends, yet decades later, the industry is still following him. So, what now? Can Helmut Lang ever be revived, or has it strayed too far from what made it great? With no clear creative lead, the brand stands at a crossroads, its future more uncertain than ever. Can it still be revived, or is it too far gone? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and as always, thanks for watching. See you in the next one.